Hello.
Yes, great. Hi. So I am Michael.
I'm Erin, and thank you again for being here so early. We have a lot to get through, so we're going to talk really fast, and then try to get through all of it, and then we can go into more detail in the Q&A at the end of this.
Yep. So first, we have we're going to be talking about Nevermind, and Nevermind is it's an independent game that was based on Erin's MFA thesis. We graduated the same year here at USC. And it is a thriller game, sometimes described as a horror game. So there are some content warnings that we wanted to give everyone ahead of time. Specifically for the level that we'll be talking about, the game content does touch on themes of domestic abuse and gaslighting, offensive language and transgender slurs, violence against human and animals, psychological trauma, and it will also contain spoilers for the level that we'll be discussing. So, and there is gameplay video of first-person movement, so if anyone is upset by that or disturbed by that or gets motion sickness, there is a warning as well. So we wanted to make sure that anyone who is here who is bothered by any of this content, please feel free to step out. We will not be offended at all, but we just wanted to make sure that everyone was okay with the content we'll be presenting.
Okay, great. And if you get like halfway through the presentation like this is not for me and you need to leave, please do so. You won't upset us or offend us or anything like that. All right. Okay, so you already know who Michael and I are, more or less.
Yes.
From the great intro, thank you.
Yeah, thanks,
I know probably not everyone here has played Nevermind already, so I want to give a very quick overview of the game just to provide some context for what we're going to be talking about a little bit more later. So Nevermind is a biofeedback enhanced adventure thriller in which you play as a neuroprober. And a neuroprober is a psychologist of the not too distant future. Oops, there we go. That's where you work as a neuroprober. Excellent. Who works with people who have experienced psychological trauma or PTSD. Specifically, your clients are folks who have experienced a traumatic event at some point in their lives that's so horrific that their conscious minds couldn't quite process exactly what happened. And as a result,
we gotta just dim the lights a little bit.
It's a very dark game in all senses of the word.
So the slides might be a little easier to see. Is that better?
Yeah.
Great, thanks so much.
Thank you very much. So they couldn't quite process what happened to them, what the traumatic event was. And so as a result, the memories of the trauma have become repressed deep inside the client's psyche. And although the client can't remember what exactly happened to them, or in some cases that something even happened at all, it still affects them in their day-to-day life. For example, they may not be able to hold down a steady job or may experience difficulties in maintaining a relationship. And this is actually something that can potentially happen in real life to folks who have experienced a traumatic event. So it's up to you, the neuroprober, to delve into each client's psyche, and each different client is a level in the game, and you have to go and recover those forgotten memories of the traumatic event that happened to that client. So to do so, you must brave a landscape that's become dark and surreal, as these repressed memories have been kind of silently wreaking havoc on it in the background. And you do this by solving puzzles and paying attention to every single detail around you. And by the time you get to the end of the level, you should have enough clues to reconstruct the narrative of the trauma. And if you're successful, then you sort of release the memory of the traumatic event to the client. And then from there, the client can start to actually work through that which happened to them and begin the process of healing. So there's also a biofeedback component to Nevermind, but for the purposes of this discussion, we're not going to get into that very much at all. And yeah, so for a little bit of extra context, here's the trailer for the game as a whole.
And it went backwards, okay.
Woo.
No. PowerPoint.
PowerPoint's a fickle beast.
Yes.
Rated M for mature.
Lord, I don't know why this is happening to me. I was the perfect little girl.
They have yet to fix us. That's why we're here.
I know I'm not alone. I know I can get help if I ask.
times.
Yeah. So one of the clients, client number 909 in the game that we'll be talking about today, is about domestic abuse, and the featured client therein is a transgender woman. This talk is going to discuss how a team of cisgender developers approached the design and development of this level. And we aren't saying that we executed the themes perfectly. Rather, we want to discuss some of the challenges that we faced and how we attempted to tackle them for good or ill. We want this to be a dialogue and hoping to get to the Q&A as quickly as possible so that we can start that. We'll start with an overview of the level specifically, discuss our approach, and dive into the specific things further in the Q&A if you wish. So again, just for anyone that missed it, the level we'll be discussing today investigates themes of domestic abuse as well as LGBTQ identity, specifically trans and queer identity, and presents potentially triggering images, situations, and language.
All right, we're all still here. Very great. Okay, so we're gonna try to give an overview of the level for further context before we start talking about the nitty-gritty. Through video, we feel like that presents it the best way possible. So we're gonna start with the intake interview. There's one of these for every client. And this is sort of like, this is as a neuroprober, you're listening to this as you're going inside their psyche. So this is the first time you meet this client and know really anything about who your client is. So let's start that.
Yeah, and actually, before we jump into that, I just wanted to make another point. None of the clients that you meet are physically presented in the game. The only way that you have any connection with them is through these intake interviews. So this is the representation of all of the clients is only through these voiceovers that you hear. Really, PowerPoint is really giving me a heck of a time today. Oh, no.
It's like a tiny
Upper right
little-
corner of the button, you're hitting the back of your head.
It's funny, I usually get really uncomfortable in places like these. People just don't, get it. I don't believe much in therapy, to be honest. However, I know my friends say they're concerned. They practically kidnapped me, so I would talk to someone this time. I don't know what they want. But you've been very gracious, and I guess I'll try. I guess. So, okay, sure. I've become a bit of a shut-in. I don't leave my apartment much these days. It's better that way. It keeps me safe. Yeah, I keep it clean. I'm in control there. Maybe I just got tired of feeling overwhelmed out there. Tired of the wrong thing happening out there. Tired of the consequences of my actions or inactions. I don't know, just tired. I guess I know it's a problem, but it's maybe not that big of a deal. I mean, some birds live their whole lives in cages and are perfectly happy. Oh, I keep going. I'm happy to say that I've been in a steady relationship for a little over a year now. Yes, in case you were wondering, I am transgender, and my love knows and is fine with it. My partner is so great, always thinking of me and keeping me out of trouble. I mean, of course, we have our arguments, sure, but what good relationships don't, right? Okay, well, I'm here now. So if you want to go into the depths of my mind to help me with, well, whatever it is you do, by all means, have at it. I still don't think you can or need to help me, but whatever, it's fine. Whatever it is you need to do so I can get out of here and go home.
All right, and so and Nevermind's really a mystery game in many ways. So as a player, when you start the level, you have no idea of like any of the domestic abuse stuff that we've already told you about. Like this is all you know about this person, and you need to go inside their mind and figure out what this traumatic event was. And so we throw in some red herrings. There's some things that it's intentionally pretty ambiguous early on. So here's a montage clip of the whole level, again, spoilers, so you can get a sense of sort of the progression of how the narrative of this client unfolds for the player.
I thought that if I kept ignoring...
No.
That's the outro for when you solve the level, so that'll be in a second.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I think that's it. No. There we are.
is what you deserve. Fucking idiot. You did this to yourself. You shouldn't have done that. You brought this on yourself. You're worthless. It would be better if you were dead. You shouldn't have done that. Fucking idiot. This is what you deserve. You're worthless. This is what you deserve. Okay, but I mean, what's your actual gender? I don't know how to treat someone like you. I won't help you. We only serve real women here.
right, and so last video I promise, and then we can talk about a little bit more of what you just saw. And this last video is the outro, so this is sort of after you put together the sequence of the memories, you figure out what the puzzle is, you realize what the trauma was, you sort of evoke this epiphany, and so this is the client having the epiphany of what the trauma was. She's remembering what happened.
I thought that if I kept ignoring, forgetting the little truths and the big ones, it would all eventually improve. That is, if I did everything right, if I conformed to my love's expectations, maybe then everything would be perfect. I would get my reward for all the shit I've been through. But at the end of the day, it wasn't the words. It wasn't the actions. It wasn't the hate. It was my hate for myself. Deep down, I welcomed the rage. I embraced it. It confirmed what I thought I knew about myself. That I couldn't be loved. That the world out there would shred me apart if it wasn't for that relationship. Yeah, I was trapped by the threats, but the real cage was the one I built around myself. It all sounds so ridiculous when I say it out loud, but I think it's the truth. My poor little bird. God, there was something else. It sounds crazy, but do you know I couldn't even remember what happened to her? I didn't want to remember. I wouldn't even let myself think about it. I just wanted to stay home and make sure I never fucked up again, so that, nothing else that I had the gall to love would get hurt. The whole thing, it prevented me from being. But I think I understand now. I know what it is I need to do. With help and my true friends, I can do this. I can do this. I deserve this. I deserve freedom.
Okay.
That was the last video.
Yeah.
We promise. So a little bit of development background on, and we'll speed this along so we can get to the Q&A. Why we thought this level was important to make. In spring of last year, of 2016, we had an opportunity to extend the content of Nevermind. Nevermind was originally released on Steam for Mac and PC in 2015. And we had it's an episodic game, so we had the opportunity to add some additional levels, and we had a number of design treatments, potential new levels to bring to Nevermind. And the development team collectively decided which levels we wanted to build. And one of the levels we decided to pursue focused on domestic abuse and is told through the eyes of a transgender woman, which is why we came up with Client 909. And though the development team does have one LGBTQ member, hello, all the dev team members are cisgender, and despite this fact, the team as a whole felt that Client 909's story was really an important one to tell. Ones that Nevermind's unique narrative and gameplay structure and goals could possibly lend itself especially well in presenting the nuances involved in the subject matter.
So we were committed to doing our best to authentically and respectfully represent all angles of the subject matter, whether that was the domestic violence, the transgender representation, etc. And so to do this, you know, when we first started putting together the design, I locked myself away as sort of the lead game designer and just like immersed myself in as much research as I could. I looked at everything from pop culture media to books to documentaries and really tried to make sure that I was as informed as I could be before we even put down the first letter in the level design document.
But we also consulted with trans advocacy and other LGBTQ organizations. For instance, one was Forge, which is a national transgender anti-violence organization. They're Wisconsin-based, but we had several phone conversations and webinars with them. And then we also spoke with, and he's here today, hi Andy. We also spoke with the founding executive director of the Lavender Effect, which is LA-based, and that's a national organization advancing the future of LGBT heritage and culture, to talk about various trans issues that we wanted to cover in the level and which direction we may want to go and which directions we may want to avoid.
And then I think so we, you know, it was a very creatively challenging level to build on a number of levels, and practically implementing, we ran into a few challenges as well. Probably one of the biggest ones is the voice casting and direction, and I'll let you speak to that, Michael.
Sure. First of all, we really felt it's important for trans actors to be represented in films and games and all media, but it's kind of silly to have them cast solely in trans roles. But for this role, we really wanted to cast a transgender woman, and we strove to avoid what Transparent's Jeffrey Tambor spoke about in his Emmy acceptance speech, where he said, "I would very much like to be the last cisgender male playing a transgender female. I think we're there now." And that's potentially not really true. There is still a lot of cisgender men being cast as transgender women, and we were adamant about not casting a man to play a woman. We really wanted, ideally, a transgender woman, and we had a very difficult time finding transgender talent, and we spent months searching, and that started with direct outreach to personal friends and trans actresses. A personal friend who is a rather famous transgender actress, and I reached out to her, and she got back to me and said, "Honey, I would love to do this," but she actually said, honey, I would love to do this, but I just don't have time now. And then we reached out to casting directors and agents, and then casting sites. And in our casting outreach, we specifically said, this is a transgender role, looking for transgender actresses. And we did not have a great result in finding transgender actresses come to us for the voiceover for the voiceover role. So due to production deadlines and constraints, we did have to cast someone. We ended up with a very talented woman we found in the process of our research. I can do it.
Yeah.
But later on, we learned about at Trans Hollywood, which is a Twitter feed. They do not have a website, but they do have a Twitter account, and realized there were some resources that we didn't know about. We didn't know that we didn't know about at the time that we were casting, but unfortunately, by the time we discovered them, it was far too late in the development of this level. But we look forward to working with them in the future, because that outreach would have been fantastic to know about several months before we discovered them.
Okay, so we again really wanted to make sure that this experience was something that was authentic and respectful, and counterintuitively, with those ambitions in mind, we also didn't want to pull any punches when it came to presenting domestic abuse. And so throughout the entire development of the level, one major creative challenge was walking that line between representing the horrors of domestic abuse through surreal and immersive environments that Nevermind is known for, and not accidentally veering into an experience that might be perceived as being exploitative or gratuitous. And most notably, this really came later in the level where the fecal matter hits the air cooling device, where we wanted to represent how often in abusive relationships the abuser will push any and all buttons to control, and in the case of this particular client, and as we learned through this research in some abusive transgender relationships, transgender slurs and insults became a part of that attempt at control. So to help make sure that we were tracking on the right path, we once we had a basic infrastructure of the level vaguely in place, we invited as many folks into the studio to playtest the game as we could. And so we ran playtests with the gamer community, within the LGBTQ plus community, and within the LGBTQ gamer community. Did I say that right?
Gay gamer, yes.
Yeah.
Gamer, G-A-Y-M-E-R, gamer community. But it was really a challenge to get playtesters in the trans community and in the gay community who didn't identify as either male or solely identify as gay. We had plenty of male gay friends say, "Hey, I will playtest your games," and we said, "Well, that's awesome, but you were not the LGBTQ part of the alphabet we're looking for right now. We really want to get trans and queer players to play the game, and it was very specifically difficult to find that unique niche of playtesters.
But we were able to find some thanks to many very helpful friends and family members who helped connect us to some super awesome people. And we learned a ton, and we ended up making minor and a lot of major changes throughout the level based on that feedback. And it was really important, I think, to the level as a whole and the completion as a whole, getting that variety of perspectives. We can get to that a little bit later in the Q&A, but I want to move on because we're already over time. Okay, so we released this level in the fall of 2016, and honestly, we really weren't sure what to expect when it came to releasing this level out in the world, because we worked really hard to get it right, but you know, we still kind of weren't sure what to expect. However, so far the response has been pretty good, and we've received several positive messages from folks about how they can relate to the level and the story, and so that's been really heartening. Of course, the next slide, we've gotten some, that this one amused me, but for the most part, though, it actually has been very, very positive, and really more positive than negative.
Much more positive than negative, thankfully.
And so perhaps this is cause for hope that the broad gaming audiences are more ready for characters that haven't been traditionally represented in gaming. Is the level perfect? No. And did we make mistakes? Yes. However, we're really proud to have had the chance to make this level and to have have it be a part of the Nevermind world.
Well, we're really grateful to those who helped advise us and gave us feedback throughout the process, because as any game designers know, that is just, you can't build a game without that. You have to have that input from players and play testers. At the end of the day, maybe this wasn't our story to tell. We definitely need more transgender game developers in general, and we also need more developers of all backgrounds to include trans characters in their games and not focus only on the trans aspect of that character.
So yeah, so that was our journey in a what didn't seem like a brief nutshell, but was a very brief nutshell for all we want to talk about. But with that, we'd love to hear your thoughts and questions once we get to the Q&A, which I think is soon, if we have time for that.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you.